This pattern is a Greenwell's subsurface variation of a fly called the Ogdens Fancy, and I noticed that there were no videos of it online, so I figured I would make one. The Ogdens Fancy was originally developed back in 1865 by a UK man named James Ogden. James was challenged to prove that using dry flies could actually be effective, so this was the pattern that he designed for that purpose. Ogden ended up catching a large basket of fish that day, and because of this, the Derbyshire Wye became the first ever dry fly only river in the UK. I was originally going to do the dry fly version, but I didn't have any starling slips that were big enough to make the wing, so I opted for some duck quills and made it a wet fly. I'm sure this pattern would do just fine where I'm at, but I bet this thing would absolutely crush in the Irish locks. Appreciate you guys for being here as always, and I will catch you on the fly. This is a variation of a pattern called the Fat Angie, and I plan on going fishing tomorrow, so I figured I'd tie some up. The Fat Angie was developed several years ago by a Colorado man named Charlie Craven. Charlie is an expert fly tyer, and he is one of the top-selling signature fly designers for Umpqua feather merchants. Mr. Craven also owns a fly shop in Arvada, Colorado called Charlie's Fly Box. He's also an author, and I have 4 of his books, which I have used to help guide me in my tying journey. Back to the Fat Angie, the pattern began as a much more realistic and singular imitation of a flying ant, but nowadays it's used more as a general attractor pattern. According to Charlie, the fly began as a notion, and it rolled around in his head for about 10 years before bringing it to life. I will be sure to link Charlie in the description, so you guys go give him a follow, and I appreciate you guys. I will catch you on the fly. This pattern is a Greenwell's variation of the Spruce Fly, and this was my very first time tying it. The Spruce Fly was developed sometime around 1918 by brothers Bert and Milo Godfrey, who reportedly owned a hardware store in Seaside, Oregon. Apparently Bert was the first one to actually tie it, and he used a number 8 sproat hook and red wool. Once anglers started using the spruce for resident trout and steelhead, they transitioned the pattern into a streamer and started using longer hooks. Quickly gaining a reputation as a deadly pattern along the Pacific coast, the spruce soon became a favorite throughout the West. One of the articles I read proclaimed that it was originally called the Godfrey Badger or Godfrey Special, but the source wasn't really one that I used too often, so I'm unsure of its validity. One thing I do know is that this fly is absolutely beautiful. I was going to tie it with Badger, which was what it originally called for, but it's just something about Greenwell's that I can't get enough of. Appreciate you guys for being here, and I'll catch you on the fly. This pattern is called the Mocha Frappe, and I saw a few brown and black chironomids on Google, so I figured I would try to tie one, and this is what I came up with. For the main part of the body on this fly, I used Textreme Body Fly Natural in the color light brown, then I used brown midge thread to go over it. I like the midge thread because it lays really flat and it can be spread out really easily just by releasing the tension you have with your palm. For the thorax and ribbed, I used Textreme regular thread in 8/0, then I followed it up with some Solarez Bone Dry and Solarez Black. I used only 3 materials for this fly, and with that I was able to achieve a perfect mocha look, and it's almost identical to the ones that I saw on Google. I also tied up a few with a tail to see how they do. Worst case scenario, I catch nothing. Best case scenario, I catch my PB. Either way, a bad day on the water trumps a good day at work any day of the week. If there are any materials, flies, or tools you guys would like to see, let me know, and I'll catch you on the fly. This pattern is called the Sexy Waltz Worm, and I made a few rabbit dubbing ropes, so I figured I would use one on this fly to see how they perform. The Sexy Waltz Worm is a spin-off of a legendary trout pattern called the Waltz Worm. The Waltz Worm was developed around 40 years ago by avid fly tying enthusiast and Pennsylvanian angler Walt Young. Walt has been fly tying and fishing since he was only 12 years old, and he originally designed this pattern to use as a heavy lead nymph to help his flies sink faster. Almost immediately he noticed that this fly was out fishing his best nymph 23-3, and the locals were noticing as well. When asked what he was using, he told them it was called the water worm that Walt ties, but he later changed it to the Waltz Worm. The sexy variation was later adapted when Lauren Williams added a bit of flash to the body after Pat Wise's success with Euro nymphing the Waltz Worm. Appreciate you guys for being here, and I will catch you on the fly. This is a semi-realistic dragonfly larva, and I saw David McPhail tie one, so I figured I'd give it a shot. Dragonflies, aka Anisopteras, have 3 stages in their life cycle: the egg, larva, and adult. The female dragonfly can lay hundreds of eggs during their adult lives and several hatches over a few days or weeks. After 2 to 5 weeks, the eggs hatch into their larva, where they will molt 5 to 14 times over the course of 3 to 5 years. Unlike other winged insects such as butterflies, dragonflies do not have a pupal stage, so technically they undergo an incomplete metamorphosis, and they will transition straight from a larva into an adult. This transition takes place out of water, and their emergence is triggered by day length and temperature, and is synchronized in some species such as the emperor dragonfly. Fun fact, dragonflies have about 30,000 lenses in their eyes, which means they have an almost 360-degree view around them. Appreciate you guys for being here. Catch you on the fly. This is a variation of a pattern called the Olive Willie, and I had a few people request it, so here it is. The Olive Willie was developed back in 1995 by a Spokane, Washington man named Swede, aka Alan Peterson. Alan was sorting through his catalog one day looking through all the different patterns when it dawned on him that he needed to have his own signature fly for his shop, so he told one of his tyers to invent one. They tied up a few variations for him, and he pretty much picked what he wanted from each fly and made it into one. His tyer then tied one final fly for him, and the Olive Willie was born. The original shop was located in Woodinville. Then in 2003, Swede's Fly Shop moved to Spokane, Washington, and that's when it started promoting the fly. Fast forward to February of 2006 at the fly fishing show in Bellevue, crowds of people were noticing his pattern and shouting, "Is that the Olive Willie?" And in that moment, Swede realized just how popular his fly became. Catch you guys on the fly. This pattern is called the Peking Caddis, and this was my very first time tying it. The Peking Caddis was developed back in the 1970s by a Livingston, Montana man named George Anderson. George originally tied this pattern to imitate the Mother's Day caddis, aka Brachycentrus, for the Yellowstone River and several other bodies of water. In the beginning, George would wrap some Hungarian partridge to imitate the legs, just like I do here, but as the pattern evolved, people started tying the partridge in beard style, where the feather is bound together and tied in on the underside of the hook. Nowadays, many people tie them backwards as well, and I like to think that doing it that way gives it more of a natural presentation when drifting, but it doesn't matter how you tie it, it is a proven pattern and trout love them. I just wanted to say thank you guys again for all the love and support. I'm still in shock by how fast I hit 100K, and I'm super excited to see what's in store for the channel in the future. Appreciate you guys. Catch you on the fly. This pattern is called the Gradient Grub, and whoever's comment gets the most like across all platforms by the end of the week, I will send it to them for free. I told you guys yesterday that I was saving the best color of latex for last, but I got a message from someone saying that I forgot to do the ultra thin stuff. So I figured I'd tie a fleshy little grub with it. I really enjoy the thin latex because it shows the underbody really well and it's super stretchy, so a little piece goes a long way. I also forgot to mention to you guys that I do sell variety packs that come with all of the colors in my arsenal. I know that these last few videos have been geared towards getting my products out there, but any good business person knows that it has to be done. Again, if you guys want to pick some up, the link to my website is in my bio. Also, we're about to hit 100K on Instagram. That is super exciting, but I didn't even have time to prepare for a giveaway, but I am working on it. Catch you on the fly.